Good morning, boys and girls. Been a long time since I've done a video. Man, it's just been so busy around here. And, you got to realize I worked on the ranch for 25 years. That's 25 years. And so having a complete career change, something I really have no background in, no experience, it's been challenging. So I've done a couple of guitars. I've worked on a couple, maybe three. I've got two in the shop right now. One I've got to finish today. So I'm going to do that. But it's been really super slow. I don't know that I'm ever going to get back into full-time, or at least, I was pretty well full-time, even though I had a job on the ranch. I don't know I'm going to be able to do guitars again at the level that I did it before. But we'll see. No one knows what's going to happen. And you got to understand, I worked on the ranch for 25 years. That's a long time. And to switch over to a completely different career, which I have no background in, no experience in, don't even really have the desire to do it, but you kind of got to go with the flow and make the best of a situation. So anyway, we'll just see what happens. But I did comment in the last video that got cut off before the stupid iPad battery died. I commented that I had some practice tips. And so I thought I would get back to those since someone commented on it. And they said, we wait in suspense, Well, yeah, I hear you. I've not been playing as much as I needed to, as much as I used to. So the tip that I had was on how to kind of get back into playing, and you hear the comment all the time, to practice fast, you have to practice slow. And I wanted to comment on that, and I have experience in several disciplines, and to me, a discipline is all the same, whether it's music or archery, dirt bike riding, mountain bike riding, skiing, whatever it is. They're kind of all the same. Is how do you get better? How do you work on a technique or something like that you need to practice? So in other words, in archery, I have won 3 state championships, and I set out to win just one shoot, and I ended up getting 3 state championships, and I had to really, 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 really work at my technique in order to do that. I shot bows since I was about, 12 years old. I mean, all my life. And then I shot fingers, finger release for 20 years. Then I switched to a mechanical release. And that took some radical changes. And the reason I did that was in order to compete at a different level, because there's no finger class anymore. I mean, it's rare. It's a bow hunter freestyle limited, which means you're going to shoot with the release. And so that was quite a challenge. But what I found out, I'm just going to give you this information, and then we're going to relate it back to the instrument here as best as I can. And I'll try to do the same with the dirt bike, and then we'll stop there. We'll get to this mandolin that I have in my hand here. But what I found out with archery was I shot fingers for 20 years, and I shot fingers pretty good, I mean, I competed in some shoots on that, and I would get first, second place, like that. So I shot pretty good, but it was wrong. It was a bad technique. And what I found when I went to an archery release was you shoot, boom. And I would watch a picture or video of myself, and my hand would stay here, like this. You're supposed to recoil backwards. And I know that, and I would go like this. I only saw this through video. Okay, so video is a very, very important technique for me personally, because so many times, no matter what the discipline, you think you're doing it right. And then you watch a video, slow motion maybe, and you realize you're not doing it right. So what I saw in archery, when I went to the release, the first thing I saw was that I would go like this and collapse. And the reason I would do that is because when I shot with the fingers, what I would do is simply relax my fingers. The string would the bowstring would rip out of my fingers, and off I would go, and I'd make the shot. That's not the way you're supposed to shoot. You're supposed to shoot like this, and you're supposed to use back tension to pull the string away, like this. And that's where the recoil comes from, is the back tension, pulling the string apart. And what I saw with the release was, first of all, I would collapse because I was used to just relaxing on the shot. The release doesn't go off if you relax. You've got to pull through the shot, or you punch the trigger. So what I saw when I went to the release was that I would go like this, and after I got rid of the collapsing deal and started pushing the trigger, my hand would stay here. And then I would go like this, because you're supposed to recoil from it, right? So it's like doing a follow through in basketball where you shoot and then you follow through. You see? Not quite right. Looks right. You think you're doing it right. You're not doing it right. It took maybe a year, 2 years for me to actually get that feeling of the back release. And what I had to do is completely switch releases to, a back tension release, a hinge release, where you're supposed to pull it through like this to make it go. Now, you can cheat that by twisting your hand. And I did that for a little while. I started getting the combination. What I finally did was tie a string to the trigger release and have somebody stand behind me and pull the trigger so that I didn't know when it was going to go. And the first time that happened, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's weird. That's what it's supposed to feel like? That's strange. Point of that was I had to radically get out of my mode in order to get the right feeling and the right technique down. Once I felt what that true surprise release did, because you had to put some tension on that in order to hold the string, you see, and then bam, it's gone. And I'm like, gosh, the first time that happened, I did just like, whoa, threw the bow apart. And I thought, that's what it's supposed to feel like. That's weird. Once I got that right feeling, then I could work on that and try to recapture that same feel. And then I went to the hinge release, and you can Google that sometime. Google back tension hinge release, and you'll get an idea what I'm talking about. Stupid iPad wants me to do my verification settings. I don't want to do my verification settings right now. So I had to reach up and hit that. All right, so once I felt that, then I worked on that quite a bit. And it's the same thing with the dirt bike, is you're supposed to keep your back straight. Well, I thought I was keeping my back straight. What I found out, this is a mechanical thing, I found out that I was doing this and hunching my back like this, you see, keeping my back straight. And I think, keep your back straight, you know. And also I'd lean forward from the hips, you see, like I'm doing here, lean forward from the hips. And I thought, okay, that's right. Then I got a couple of really good teachers and coaches on YouTube, and I saw what they were doing, and two of them specifically mentioned this. You really don't keep your back straight. What you do is you actually kick your butt up like this, you see. This is funny, isn't it? You actually rotate your hips like this. You don't keep your back straight. You stick your butt up in the air, you bend your back, and you push your chest out like this. And your back is curved. But what they meant by a straight back was the point from the top to your butt is in a straight line. But you're actually curved. And when I saw that, and when one of the guys actually said it, then I realized, oh yeah, I'm not doing it right. Plus, you got to keep your knees straight, and all that goes backwards, like this. So you bend your back, and it's amazing how much moving your hips like that changes the traction on the motorcycle. Same thing on a bicycle too, on a mountain bike. It's the same thing. You're moving your hips back and forth like that. And that clicked. Once that clicked, I understood what they were saying, and then I watched a video of myself, and I was not doing that. So video is really, really, really important, in my humble opinion, for practicing your instrument in front of a mirror, where you can look up and see yourself. And the whole looking up at the mirror is important because it keeps you from looking down like this at your instrument. You see, you're watching yourself in the mirror and you're doing this. And the video is the same way. I'm watching myself in the video to make sure I'm still in the video. And your posture changes, your attack like this changes, and so many things will change. And you can watch yourself do this and you say, am I doing this right? For instance, you might think that your fingers are staying close to the fingerboard and they're actually flying off. Or you'll see little motions. Oh, I didn't know I was doing that. Okay, so the point that I want to get to today, after getting to the major point here, which is so many times you think you're doing it right and you're not. Video will help you and coach will help you, but you've got to feel it for yourself. And for me, a video of practicing in front of a mirror, that's why when you go to the gym, they have the mirrors like that, and it's not to watch yourself flex. It's to watch to make sure you're doing the motion right. So if you do a side twister motion to build up your core, a lot of times you'll bend forward and use your body to pull that weight rather than doing it this way. So my point, number one point, so many times you think you're doing it right and you're not. Someone says, keep your fingers close to the fingerboard. Well, you can't just make them do that. A low action will help, and playing softly, quietly, and keeping your fingers on there as long as possible, deliberately, can help you do that. So the thing that I've heard so many people say is you have to play slow in order to play fast. The trap that I see people get caught in is they never learn to play fast. They just keep playing slow and slow and slow and slow and slow and slow and slow. And at some point, if you want to play faster and cleaner, you've got to actually play faster. Now, when you're practicing, you crash and burn. You should push yourself to the point where you crash and burn. And it's a lot easier on a mandolin or a guitar than it is on a dirt bike or skis or archery, you know. But you've got to push yourself to that point where you crash and burn in order to find your limitations. And then you back off of that and you work on that a little bit more and you push it again. So in archery again, you would shoot 60 arrows, and I tell you what, the hardest arrow, especially if you've shot a really good score, the hardest arrow is the last arrow, because it's just ripping through your mind. This is the last arrow. This is it. This is my score. I've shot a 59 out of 60. One more arrow, and I get a perfect score of 60 out of 60. And it is the hardest thing in the world. You start thinking of all the mistakes you're going to make, and this is it. This is it. This is critical. You tense up. Same thing on a dirt bike. I've been in races where it was me and another guy. Last corner. And I'm thinking, God, don't mess this up. Don't mess this up. I got to beat this guy. And you get tense. And when you get tense, you blow it. So the way to practice that, the way I would practice in archery is I would shoot one arrow. I would score it. And I would walk up and pull that one arrow. And every single shot was a critical shot. Dirt bikes, you know, you have to acknowledge the fact that you're going to get tense. You have to acknowledge the fact that this is the last corner, and don't think about that last corner. Think about it as, God, I got 3 more laps to go, even if you don't. It's all so much a mental game, so much of a mental process, but I know my flaw, and my flaw is I get tense on the last shot, at the last arrow. And when you're doing mandolin or guitar contest, it's the first note. You're sitting up there on stage at Winfield, national championship. You practice your tunes a million, thousand, zillion times. and you go up on stage and you sit there, and Winfield is full of all these people, and 7 past champions are watching from here, and you go, uh-oh, I've got to hit the mandolin. The first note. Don't blow the first note. And then you get tense. So that was my flaw. So in order to get past that flaw, when I would do a contest, I would go up there and deliberately go, a mic check. But it's not a mic check. It's me warming up and getting over the little jitters. And you're allowed to do that, you know. You do your little mic check. Stop. And then you let the judges know, all right, I'm ready to go. And then you would go and do your thing. Like that. And I would always make sure that my first couple of notes, my bars, were the easiest things I could possibly do. So that I know I'm not going to mess this up. The hard stuff comes later, and when it came to the hard part, then I would, in my mind, I would just have to say, nothing. I would not think, this is the hard part. There's nothing harder about that part than any other part. You practice 1,000,000 times, you're good to go. Just calm down, and you pull it off, you know. If you can't pull it off in practice, then you make it a little bit simpler. And you'd also have little bailout points where you think, man, I'm not feeling this. And you'd have an easier version of that to bail off into. And you might play that easier version first and then play the harder version second. I don't know. The point of all this is during practice and during competition, you've got to find your weak points. Practice is about strengthening the weak points. So when people say practice, just practice. How do you get to be a professional musician? It's just practice. It's not talent. It's just practice. That's wonderful, but you've got to practice the right things. Okay, you've got to practice the right things, and you have to find your weak points and strengthen those. So through competition, I know that my weak points in archery are the last arrow. I know that in dirt bikes, it's the last corner. I know where my strengths are. I know where my weaknesses are. And I work to the strengths and build on the weaknesses. So when you practice slow on your instrument, what you're doing is trying to strengthen your coordination back up. And that's good. You practice slow, but at some point you have got to go fast. And you find out through the fast where your crash and burn points are. Where do you fall apart? Then you go back and you go slow again and you figure out how to make that work. So, I've forgotten so much stuff on mandolin and guitar, and I've had to practice slow. Well, how slow? Well, a point which you have pretty good confidence. You know, you can crash and burn a little bit, make a mistake. You make note of those mistakes and you come back to them. So let's take a tune, Forked Deer, which is one of my contest tunes, and it's a fairly easy tune for me. But there's a couple places in it that I wanted to kind of pick up a little bit. So how does the tune go? I mean, God, that's the first thing for me. I forgot the tune. And that's happened to be on stage at Winfield in the middle of Crazy Creek. I was so relaxed and so calm. I'm up there playing, and I think, what tune am I playing? It was absolute. I couldn't remember what tune I was playing. So I knew I was in G or A or whatever the key was that I was in. So I noodled around in that key for a minute until I remembered what tune I was playing and got back on to my practice regimen. Well, that was an educational thing in itself. And so that was the thing I took out of that. Woo! That's something I need to work on, is to make sure I don't lose track of what tune I'm playing, you know. So, Forked Deer. So, the first thing I have to do is get my coordination back between my two hands. So I'm going to take it, I would take it about, like, for me, 80%, 70% speed. Get my fingers moving. Oh, the flub note. Why did I flub that note? My coordination was a little bit off. That's not a problem, okay? Let's do it again then, okay? This time around, I'm going to practice just for fun. I'm practicing accenting different parts of that. So that I'm going to, in my head, think, make that note strong. Make that note strong. So. Okay? I vary that just very slightly. It might not even come through to you, but in my head, I'm thinking I'm going to hit that note just a little bit harder this time, the one that I flubbed. Now, the B part on Forky Deer goes. And what I really want to do is get a in there. So. Now that little is something not mechanical. It's not something I saw on a piece of paper and I thought I want to put that in there. It's something that I hear in my head and I think to myself, I'm going to capture a little bit of that Sam Bush feel. Because Sam is really, really good at that. I want to try and get that little in there. And in my head, that's what I got. Like that. And I'm going to do that. Now, mechanically, how do I do that? Well, I give it a crack the first time, relatively up to speed. So, and I kind of flubbed it. That's okay. I'm going to see if it even fits in there and if I even like the sound of it. So that's okay, Okay. I didn't quite automatically pull that off the way I wanted to pull it off. So now I'm going to slow it down and see, okay, mechanically, how do I actually do that little... What is it? Is it a straight down stroke? Can I get both strings at the same time? That's a lot of movement to make over here, crossing two strings at that speed. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull that off. So maybe it's a downstroke and an upstroke, and then a ruffle. Now, right away, that feels better to my hand. It seems like I pulled that off better in my hand. So, point of this is, I started slow. I started fast. I saw where I crashed and burned, and then I backed it up to a slower speed to see mechanically, what do I actually really need to do here? So, is it a straight down, or is it a down and an up? Is it actually like a triplet figure, or is it a tremolo figure? And what I found out there, just to listen to that, I said, okay, mechanically I need like a little bit of a pause on the end so that I can get back into the picky stuff. So, and then pause. And I like that. I think that captures what I was trying to get. And having the pause in there actually makes that phrase to me seem a little bit more distinct. So, you see? And that's kind of really out of what I was after. So I used a combination of fast and slow in order to refresh myself on how to do this thing. Okay? So let's take another phrase real quick. Let's say blackberry blossom. And there's a high break, and then there's a low break. And on the low break, sometimes I'm not real clean on it. So, good enough. It's the first couple of notes I wanted here. So. Okay. So I'm going to slow that down and make sure I get those first couple notes clean and see if there's something mechanical that I'm kind of missing when I go slower. So, and then I see right away that it's a little bit difficult for me to move back to this finger. So, that's easy. This one though, kind of, I don't know, catches in my fingers. It catches. So, okay, so I'm going to practice that. See, I blew it. So, just not think about it so hard. Okay, so I've identified a sticky point, if you will, a sticky point where it's not quite as clean. So now I'm just going to practice that slowly, and I'm going to put it into the phrase. Because here's the other thing about playing slowly. If you practice rote memorization, you lose some of your reaction time. And a lot of people, I read this one guy, professional musician, and the question was, how do you improvise? And he said, don't. And I just thought, golly, I mean, you're only going to play what you have practiced a million times with no variations and no on the spur of the moment. It's like me sitting here talking to you versus reading off a script that I've prepared. I want to see how good you can spontaneously create something. I don't want to hear the same thing that I heard on the record a million times. To me, that's not music. I used to paint, and do art and stuff like that, and it was boring. And after I thought about it a while, I realized the reason I thought it was boring is because it's dead. I do the painting, I do the artwork, I hang it on, it's dead. That's it. Someone comes in and looks at it, oh, that's nice, but it's dead. Music is alive. So every single time that I play Blackberry Blossom. I've got things that I practice, but there's also things when I leave it loose and say, on the spur of the moment, I think, I'm going to go for that. And I might blow it. But there's stages of playing music. There's a recording where it's going on a record and it's dead. And you want that to be the best that you can do it, to say what you want it to say. But you can't go back and change the Bluegrass Album Band to kick off the Blue Ridge Cabin Home. You can't go in there and tweak that on the record anymore. It's really good. But I wouldn't want to play that every single time. I would want a variation a little bit. So then I've got a record, which is dead, set in stone. Then you got a live performance, and it's live. And I want to hear the guy go for it a little bit. I want to hear a little bit of variation, a little bit of change. And then you've got jamming. And when you're jamming, you're just playing, And so if you make a mistake on the record, it's there forever. If you make a mistake while playing live, who cares? Really? I would rather see the guy go for it, make a mistake, and then go, roll his eyes. I don't mind if he rolls his eyes and say, "Ah, man, I went for it and I didn't quite make it, but I went for it." There was a motocross guy, Jeremy Martin, and no, it was Justin Cooper. And Justin Cooper won the first race, and he started off not so good, fifth, sixth, or something in the second one, and he's going for it. And on the last lap, he's in second place, and he's just about to catch the guy, and he crashes. He gets back up and he finishes in fifth place. But you know what? He went for it. And nobody was mad at him, including him, because he was going for the win. And he crashed and burned. And that's what happens. It's a lot better than going around playing it safe in second place. He could have maybe pulled that off and made the win. And if you don't go for it, you'll never know, Then it's boring. I like to hear people go for it. And if they make a mistake or they don't quite pull it off, that's fine, I wanted to hear them go for it. So that's where playing on stage live is about. It's like, give me the live stuff. Give me the improvised stuff. Give me the variations. Give me the difference between the recording. And then you've got jamming. And jamming is where we're sitting here messing around. To me, jamming is almost group practice. When I'm jamming, I want 4 or 5 breaks because I want to try something new in a group situation to see if it works. If it works and I like it, then I'm gonna keep that in my head. I'm gonna come back to it, and I'm going to flesh it out and work it out and solidify it so that I might one day put that on a record or use it in a live performance. Okay, so I've got a video on my music channel on noodling, and in that noodling video, I took Red Haired Boy, I set the camera up, and I literally played totally unrehearsed, screwing up stuff, but I came across all these cool things that I'd never thought of before, and I screwed them up the first time. So the second time I went back around on it, I went for that again. I'm trying to find, what am I looking for here? What's this idea that I'm trying to get here? And about 4 or 5 times later, I got it. At least I got what I was trying to get. Then when I hit the end of the record button, I went back and sat down and I solidified that idea. And I got that idea down in my head. But that was practice. That was just playing the instrument, looking for ideas and things that I wanted to do. So when I was playing Forky Deer, I would always play that. And I'd think to myself, that's a good place to put a, to stick that in there. Perfect place for it. And I would come back and practice it. So you can't play slowly all by yourself, all by itself, and expect to just magically play fast. You can't do it that way. You've got to actually play fast at some point. You find your weak points. You go back and practice slower and try to work on those weak points to bring them up to where your strong points are. So I have some strong points on this and a few, and I have a lot of weak points. So I try to bring the weak points up to the point where they're better, at least. They may not never be the same as the strong, but they'll be better. And that, to me, is the real key point to when people say, is it practice or is it talent? Well, why? There's no or in there. It's not an either-or situation. It's a both situation. So if you have a lot of talent and never practice, you'll hit a level to what I call your talent runs out. And at that point, your talent runs out. And some people have an immense amount of talent, and they're good right here. Then there's the guys that don't have much talent, but they have stubborn determination like me, and they practice a lot. Now, am I ever going to get as good as this guy? Maybe not. But I am going to get better for me. Now, the really killer combination is the guys that have a lot of talent and practice the right way, the right things, bring their weaknesses up, and boy, those guys are unbeatable. So it's not an either-or situation. So the same thing here, it's not playing slow only. It's playing slow as part of the combination. So you play slow, then you bring the speed up, you find your weak points, you go back, you work on those weak points and bring them up a little bit. Get those ideas where you crashed and burned, make them better. Will you ever be a top pro? Probably not. Will you be better than you are today? Yes, you probably will be. And that really is all any of us can ever hope to do. We just want to get better at what we do. So to me, that little in Forky Deer is kind of a challenging thing. It didn't just come automatically and easily. But I want to put it in there. I can't do it really super well, so I'm going to practice at it. And I'm going to bring my level up a little bit. So the practicing slow thing is just one of those tools that you use to get to that point, and it's practicing slow. So you're going to practice, and then there's a jam, and then there's an on stage, and then there's a recording, and they're totally, in my mind, separate entities. So golly, you never want to improvise? To me, that's just like, you're just going to spit your rote stuff back again. So I say, how do you learn to improvise? You start improvising. When I started learning to improvise, and I could never improvise, I was such a off the paper player. I couldn't improvise a lick. So I sat down and I said, all right, fine. The first step to improvising is you got to move your fingers. And I mean, you got to move your fingers under pressure. So here's a song. I don't know the song. I'm going to improvise on it. I'm going to play something. And your first inclination is probably panic. And then you lock up and you can't move your fingers. So you got to get over that hurdle. So the first thing I did was I went in there and I would say, all right, fine, I'm going to forget the melody. Forget all of these preconceived, I want to sound like Tony Rice on this solo. Well, forget that. The first thing, I got to move my fingers. So we'd do 9-pan hammer, G, C, D, And I'd say, forget the melody. All I'm going to do is make my fingers move. So that was my improvisation in a jam situation, not a recording situation, not a live on stage situation. At first, just a simple, where nobody cares, make your fingers move. And man, that's the first hurdle. The second hurdle, all right, let's see if I can get a little bit of melody in here. So I just start playing off the chords. Where's the melody? So I go, gosh, there's a couple of melody notes in there. In fact, that almost sounds a little bit like 9-pound hammer. So I'd fly with that improvisation for a minute. And then the next time we played 9-pound hammer, which would be my third, fourth, fifth, sixth break, you see, because in a jam I want multiple breaks so that I can get this down on the fly. Because getting it on the fly is the key point of improvisation for me. It's taking that thing and pop. I produced it for you right here. Magic. Artwork. You see? Now, okay? It's like sketching when you're doing artwork, and you go as fast as you can, bam, and there it is. And you didn't have time to laboriously work it out. So, okay, so after getting kind of a melody, then I'd start thinking more about the melody on the fly, okay? So, 9-pound hammer. It had some melody in it, but it was good enough for an improvised break, especially if everybody else is playing the melody and we're in a jam situation or a live situation where your notes are just more for feeling, more for flow, more for atmosphere. Now, if I'm going to record 9-pound hammer, yeah, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to work on it. Do I like that? Do I want that to go down for posterity? Maybe I do, maybe I don't, you know. But again, what I'm trying to get to is the thought process going on here in all these different levels here. And which level am I trying to satisfy right now? If I'm practicing, then I'm going to go find my weak points and work on them in practice. If I'm put into a live situation, I'm going to bring together what I have, and some of that is improvisation because I have practiced improvising and I know what I can get away with, and I know what works, and I know what doesn't work, and I know what I can do, what I can't do, because I've practiced those things, and I've been in those situations before, and I've stuck my neck out and said, well, I pulled that off, or I crashed and burned like Justin Cooper did, and now I know that, okay? So it just kind of irks me. Oh, don't ever improvise. Don't improvise. No. Or practicing slow is the only way to go fast. Yeah, but you got to also go fast. And you'll never learn to improvise if you don't improvise, if you don't crash and burn. You just kind of pick the points at which you're going to crash and burn. So don't crash and burn in a rocky field, you know. You're going to get hurt. When I was doing my mountain bike, I would go out into the park where the grass was really soft, and I would deliberately slam on the front brake and flip over the handlebars. The grass is soft, so I had a cushioning spot. And I would learn how to push the bike back between my legs and jump over the handlebars and land on my feet. And I tell you what, I practiced that for a couple of days, and I went out riding my mountain bike, and I hit this stump, and the bike flipped forward, and my reactions kicked in because I had practiced them. Went over the handlebars, landed on my feet, turned around and caught the bike by the seat post as it went by. And that was such... I mean, I laughed. I'm like, I couldn't have done that before. But I had practiced crashing and burning, and I had practiced improvisation, and I practiced those kind of things. So I practiced slow, but I also practiced fast. And when I'm trying to get something back that I haven't done in a while, the first thing, the number one thing I do is simply get the coordination down. So that's where the practicing slow really comes in, is just getting that coordination down. It doesn't even have to be a tune. That was the point of my noodling video. Just noodle. Just make your fingers and pick and everything work. So that's what this does, you know. Just working on the coordination right there. Because if I don't have my coordination down, there's no way in the world I'm going to play the tune, you see? And if I don't have some speed in just natural coordination, there's no way I'm going to play fast. So, you know, all of these things go together. It's not, to me, it's not talent or practice. It's talent and practice. Talent get you here. Practice will only get you so far. You've got to have some talent. There's just no question about it. I've been beat so many times in motocross, archery, everything, by people that had natural talent. But I, personally, was better because I had practiced on the amount of talent that I had. But it is not an either-or situation. So playing slow is not the end of the story. Playing slow is a means to get your coordination, to get the ideas solidified in your head, to remind yourself of the stupid tune that you forgot because you haven't played it in a year or two. That's what it does. And then you push yourself up and you play it faster. You find your weak spots, you go back. Okay? So I repeated a lot of things here many times because I'm trying to get the concept across to you. And I know when you're talking, you know, the concept went by, whoo, and you missed it. So I'm going to repeat it again to make sure you get it. Okay, so that's why the repetition on this thing. And I want to make sure you understand the main point, the secondary points. I want to make sure you try to get the differences. In my mind, I'm nobody, okay? But I've gone from being able to not improvise at all to I have played gigs where I walked on stage with my mandolin and saw the set list for the first time on the floor. So, like, what am I going to do? Not improvise? Tunes that I didn't know. I learned old spinning wheel on stage. And did I play it the way I wanted to play it on a record? No. But nobody cared. It was a small festival somewhere. Nobody's sitting there analyzing every note. I played what I played. I played pretty simply. Got applause. So, point is, I've done that. So, I know my points, know my strong points, know my weak points, because I put myself into in-fire situation to use that as a learning experience. So, slow, fast, all this stuff, those are all just one tool to get you better. You will never get where you want to be. I don't know anybody that, even pros, Stuart Duncan, practices. And, guys like Stuart are not of this world. They're just not. The talent level. But he practices. And he practices his weaknesses to build them up. So, okay, well, I hope you got something from this. I'm about to go to the shop, and I'm going to work on this guitar and finish it up, and hopefully I will get it done. So, bye-bye.